Welcome on in, ladies and gentlemen. Three bold takes, and we are back in our off-season mode. And part of the off-season is to look ahead, right? Not only do you recap 2023, but you look ahead to 2024. And we've got some interesting conference realignment things that are going on. So to do that and kind of talk about that, we are going to go through all the Power Four conferences. Sorry, Pac-12, rest in peace. But the remaining four power conferences, and we're going to rank the top five coaches in each of them. Starting with this video, the Big 12. We're going to go 1 through 5, kind of give a little discussion about why we think this order is the way it is. And then stay tuned for later in the offseason where we actually talk about hot seat coaches moving forward. Chase, I want to kick it off to you first with the Big 12. Who is your number one coach in the Big 12 in 2024?
2024, you got to remember who's coming to the Big 12 in 2024. You got Colorado, you got Utah, you got Arizona. And honestly, there's a lot of great names here. Easily, though, my favorite one is Whittingham. Kyle Whittingham is my number one. Utah, what he's done, you lost your quarterback last year and Cam Rising for the full season. You still came out with an 8-win season, 9-win season. So he has been able to transcend each season and work with what he's had. Utah is not a power program in recruiting or competition on the football field, but he has made them a Rose Bowl winner, a Pac-12 champion, and I think he's going to be able to translate that into the Big 12. Quinn?
Yeah, man, you look at the Big 12, and I think unlike the other major conferences, there is no like power brand in the Big 12 anymore. So this is going to be a conference of what coaches can develop and get the most out of their players. That's why my number one is also Kyle Whittingham, man. Like I didn't really have much of a thought on this. He's been at Utah for years. He's like Chase said in 2021, 2022, won the Pac-12 back-to-back years when no one thought they would do it either year. And then they were really competitive this past year despite all the injuries that they suffered. I believe Cam Rising's come back for 2024. You've got more guys who are just program guys out at Utah, and I expect them to honestly make a big splash in their first year in the conference. And then going forward, I mean, this is just a team that I will think will constantly be at the top of the Big 12 due to the culture that Whittingham brings to Utah. So give me Kyle Whittingham as my number one choice in the Big 12.
Well, I tell you what, this is not starting out in a very debate fashion here. I'm going to go Whittingham as well. And my thing is that similar to what you guys have said, he's always been able to get more out of the talent that he had, which is lesser than the competition in the Pac-12. Right? They don't recruit in the top 5 or even top 10 most years, but year in and year out, it seems like they're always very competitive, and I think that speaks to Whittingham and the family nature that he kind of promotes and the mental toughness as well. I mean, going into a game, you may know that you're not as quote unquote talented as some of these other teams that you're going to be facing, the Oregons, the Washingtons, even the USCs of the world. Um, but you beat them, and it's like how. And I think you always have to go back to coaching and what's instilled in the players. So I'm going to go Whittingham as well. I'm very excited to see Utah in the Big 12 because Quinn, you kind of alluded to it. There is no big brand anymore. The two biggest brands, Oklahoma and Texas, have jumped ship. So it's going to make it very interesting to see who can kind of rise to the top here. And I'm excited to see it, especially with the 12-team playoff. You get that automatic bid into the playoff if you win the conference. So that kind of leads us into number two. Quinn, I want to jump to you on your number two here in the Big 12.
Yeah, my number two, I'm going to stick with a coach who's been in the Big 12, and we have seen win a Big 12 title recently, and that's Chris Kleiman from Kansas State. I think Kansas State will continue to be one of the top end teams of the Big 12 going forward, mainly due to a lot of the same reasons that I've got Utah at the top with Whittingham. Just less body of work for me when I'm trying to decide who's won. So give me Chris Kleiman as my number two.
That is actually a great choice. He is on my list, but at two for me, I have Lance Leopold. And that's going to be maybe a little off, but it's Kansas. For me, winning at Kansas is winning at Vandy. It doesn't happen a lot, and if you do, you're going to be a storied coach. The 5 years before Leopold got there, 0-12, 2-10, 1-11, 3-9, 3-9, and that was with 0-9 as well, and that's with Les Miles the 2 years before him, who was a great head coach at LSU. So what Leopold has done is brought in several nice recruits. Jalen Daniels, he was 6-7 in his second year. He's only 6-7 though because Daniels went down. I believe he like broke his collarbone or something like that. So he was out the rest of the season, right? Kind of they were 6-0 to start the year. But 9-4 this past season and having Kansas on the map, even competing against teams like Oklahoma or Texas in the past couple years, I think he's done an absolutely amazing job. And so kind of like what you're saying, Quinn, doing more with less. You don't have anything less than when you're at Kansas as a football team. So I like Leopold in my two. Fred?
So for me at number two, it's also a coach that's been in the Big 12 for an extended period of time. I want to say he's the most tenured coach in the Big 12, and that's Gundy. And I think that might be off the wall and kind of controversial to put him here. But what I will say is that it seems like whenever people start to doubt him as a coach, doubt his program and the direction they're going, he all of a sudden flips a switch and ends up making the Big 12 title, just like last year. Like we had him dead, buried, and gone. We had him, he needed to be fired after the South Alabama game. And then they all of a sudden stormed back and won 6, 7 games in a row and made it to the Big 12 championship game. And they, oh, by the way, played in the Big 12 championship game. I think it was a couple of years ago. So to say that Oklahoma State and Gundy is kind of an afterthought in the new Big 12, to me is just simply not true. So I've got Gundy at number two. Now, number three is going to be interesting here, I think, because this is kind of like a coach that more than likely is probably an established coach in the Big 12. So it's going to be interesting to see who we got. But Chase, let's swing it over to you first. Number three on your list. Who you got?
Just a doozy, man. I'm gonna follow you up, Fred. I've got Gundy here. I didn't want Gundy too high, but also couldn't put him too low because he is one of the most historic coaches in the Big 12 conference overall. Has done great things at Oklahoma State, but at this moment is not the coach that he once was for Oklahoma State. I think he's already hit his peak, and he is now just I don't want to be rude, but kind of a figurehead a little bit. And I think last year kind of showed some stripes to it, losing to South Alabama, losing to UCF, but making the Big 12 title game. I think I'm not saying it was a fluke, but there weren't a lot of teams competing for that. But they did beat Oklahoma in the back half of the season to elevate them there. But Gundy is a great coach, but he's not your elite Big 12 coach said, hey, I think this coach is going to win me multiple Big 12 championships over the next few years or whatnot. So looking at 2024 and beyond, I got to have Gundy at 3. Quinn?
All right, my number three might be a little off the wall for some people, but he is the only coach in the Big 12 to have been a head coach of a team to play for a national championship.
Oh,
I'm going with Gus Malzahn at UCF as my number three. Big reason, huge experience recruiting, especially in the Southeast area. They are really they're the only program in the Big 12 that's going to get to take advantage, unless you want to count Houston, of the Southeast recruiting bed being in Orlando, Florida. His experience being a top end recruiter and his ability to pitch, not necessarily to the 5-star guys who are going to want to go play in the SEC or maybe in the ACC at Florida State and Miami, but instead of those 3 and 4 star caliber dudes getting a chance to come and compete in the Big 12. I think UCF will be poised to become a pretty competitive and hard to beat program in the Big 12 under Malzahn. So I've got Gus Malzahn as my number three.
Wow. Wow. And you know what, Quinn? I'm right there with you. Gus Malzahn was my number three as well. And how can you not put a guy like Gus Malzahn with the experience he has in the upper tier of college football on this list? Chase, you might want to shut your mouth before a fly gets in it. But UCF, give them a couple years, man. Now, when they came in, honestly, I wasn't shocked that they were invited to the Big 12. I personally thought that they'd end up in the ACC at some point, but having them in the Big 12, I think opens them up to an even better opportunity to be one of the better programs in a particular conference, right? Because if you go to the ACC, you're dealing with Florida State that is in conference and in state in recruiting. That's tough. But if you go to the Big 12, if you're in Florida and you want to play in the Big 12, that's really the only school you got there. So it's very interesting there. Love me some Gus Malzahn at number 3. Quinn, I love that pick as well. Number 4, Quinn, let's pass it on to you.
So number 4 is going to be a guy that we've already seen on this list twice for both of y'all, and that's Mike Gundy for me. I've got him down at 4. I put him in the top 5 to show respect to Gundy for some of the stuff he's accomplished at Oklahoma State. And I know, Freddie, you brought up appearing in the Big 12 title game 2 of the last 3 years. He didn't win it, though. And that's been kind of Gundy's big problem with Oklahoma State. You take aside that 2011 season where they won the Big 12 that year, but getting completely over the hill has been Gundy's biggest issue. Now, again, with Oklahoma and Texas gone, maybe he starts doing it. My concern for Gundy, though, is I think Utah is poising themselves to become a mega power of your conference. And then I think UCF and Houston also could long term put themselves in that same position. So you really have to wonder, and then not to mention who's going to pop up out of Texas as the new big brand of Texas in the Big 12. So it makes me wonder really what is Gundy going to bring to the table to get Oklahoma State completely over the hill in the future. So he's on my top 5 to show respect to him. But similar to what Chase brought up with having him at 3, I couldn't put him near the top end because I just don't see much 2024 and beyond for Mike Gundy and the Cowboys.
Yeah, 4 is the one Quinn has mentioned. I've got Kleiman here. I think he's done a really good job at Kansas State, bringing them back to what they were in the mid 2010s. A really powerhouse of the Big 12, putting them in the Big 12 championship, winning the Big 12 championship, just competing overall, having some really good athletes at all facets of the game. They've been competitive at every single step of the way. So I think for me, what Kansas State's doing now and Kleiman has been doing, because I believe he was the North Dakota State head coach for and won 4 national championships, if I'm not mistaken. So successful there. Now he's being successful here. I think they're only going to continue to grow and should be a continued top 3 team. Unless one of these new teams or group of 5 teams start elevating themselves. But I think they should be a continued top 3 for the Big 12. Fred?
Yeah, I've got Kleiman here as well. I think that the success that Kansas State has sustained really the past, handful of years is something that needs to be recognized. And all that starts with Kleiman here as the head coach. So I've got Kansas State up there for the same reasons. And then at number 5, I have a feeling that at number 5, all these coaches have already been discussed. But Quinn, let's hear your number 5, man.
Yeah, my number 5 was Chase's number 2, and that's Lance Leipold. I like him a lot. It's like he said, winning at Kansas. I wouldn't say it's like winning at Vandy. I think there are more obstacles to get over when you come to Vanderbilt. Primarily, you're in the Southeastern Conference. Secondly, you've got a higher academic standard, but it is very similar to winning at Kentucky. It's a basketball program. They put their effort into basketball. So anytime you see Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, or UCLA doing well, you have to sit and wonder what's going on in the coaching booth at that football program. And I think Leipold's going to consistently have Kansas as a 6 to 8 win team who's going to ruin somebody's dreams each season. Now, really, you got to look across the state at Kleiman and see what will he do to Kleiman's ability to really grab hold of the Big 12 with the Wildcats. And that's really, I think, what's going to be the judging factor on Leipold's career. But we'll see going forward. That's why, again, I have him at 5 because I respect what he's done at Kansas. And I think if he was to go somewhere else, he could be incredibly competitive on the higher end. But I just don't know if that's a feat that'll be able to be accomplished with the Jayhawks.
Yes. So my 5 is not one we've discussed. And, now that y'all mentioned Gus Malzahn, I'm a huge fan, but I'm going to stick with my 5. I got Deion Primetime Sanders at 5 for me. And one, let me just say, if somebody has watched through this video and is like, man, Chase, did you not see what he did yet last year? Yes, I did. But his recruiting, I think, is really going to help him. Now, definitely that he's in the Big 12. I think it's going to help move him a lot. because they could be a top 2 to 3 brand in the Big 12. They couldn't be in the Pac-12. Now, he's got to transfer a lot of those close losses last year to wins. And if he can do that, if the coaching steps up this year, his off field actions such as recruiting and getting players to play in Colorado, I think will really help them. So I got him at 5 just because mainly the off field recruiting and stuff like that fix the culture and then also translate some of those close losses to wins. I think he's easily a top 5 coach in the Big 12.
Yeah, he's lower end on my list in the entire Big 12. Nowhere near top 5. But with that being said, Lance is my number 5 as well. Man, what he's done at Kansas has been unreal for the same reasons that you guys have mentioned. Um, it's just impressive, right? To take Kansas from where they were when Les Miles left it, and if he can't have success, then that really speaks to Lance and what he's able to do with the talent that he has. Because let's be real, Kansas isn't a destination for a lot of recruits that are good at football. I mean, it's just not. Unfortunately, that's no disrespect to Kansas, but that's just how they are as a brand. Basketball, Quinn, just like you said, different story. Everybody wants to play for Kansas basketball, but football's a different story. But I think they're on the come up to kind of changing that narrative and what they kind of have going on as far as what happens around the football game as well, not just the football game. Their tailgating has really taken a step up and that sort of thing. And I think it all starts with the head coach as well. So credit him for really building that program to where it is now. Um, Go ahead, Quinn.
One more thing, now that we've finished our top fives. There's one name I noticed because I had said in the Gus Malzahn thing that he was the only coach to play for a national title. That's not true. There's one other coach that none of us put on our list, and I'm curious if y'all left him off for the same reason I did, and that's Sonny Dykes. This season was bad. And it was so bad that I almost don't care that they made the national title in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of where y'all sit as well?
I think he had a really good coordinators, Garrett Riley, brother Lincoln Riley. I think he did a really good job of that offense. A lot of great playmakers, Quentin Johnson, um, goodness gracious, Max Duggan, those kind of guys that really helped them. And then everybody left. Garrett Riley left as well for Clemson, and then all of a sudden you can't win. So, not a fluke, but had a lot of help that went his way that he couldn't replicate on his own, it seemed.
Yeah, I think it was a fluke personally. I think he had an old team. He had great coordinators, which, to be fair, he is the one that hires the coordinators. So let's give him some credit for that, right? But like you said, Chase, he hasn't been able to replicate it without him. He hasn't been able to replicate it without the star players that he had, which, take that for what it's worth. But when you have an older team, you're gonna have seasons like that. Maybe not make the national championship game. That's impressive. He did beat Michigan. But last year, yeah, that it was bad in
So
2023.
can we agree though, if they bounce back and they're winning more in the future, he could very easily quickly jump into top five in the Big 12, like
Yeah,
real quick.
yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
I think it could. I just don't think you can have a one hit wonder per se in a year, and that make you a household name for years to come. I've got to see it again. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching and listening. That has been our top 5 coaches in the Big 12. I appreciate you guys tuning in and making these lists. Let us know where we're wrong in the comments. Do we have somebody too high or somebody not on the list that should be, like Sonny Dykes, as Quinn mentioned? Let us know. Subscribe, comment, share the video, and we'll see you guys next time.